Great. All right. Well, thanks for taking the time to be here today. I'd like to welcome you all to our last research showcase of the year. My name is Emily Lesak, and I'm the Senior Research Community Officer at the Wikimedia Foundation. Today's showcase focuses on how people learn online. So millions of people learn new things online every day, either formally as part of a class or informally as they go about their day. Understanding how people learn online has become particularly important over the last couple of years as traditional in-person modes of learning have been disrupted, resulting in an increased reliance on online information access. So today we're featuring two talks focused on understanding how people find and share information online in different learning environments. So I'd like to extend a warm welcome and a big thank you to our speakers today. First, we'll have Lionel Brossi and María Castillo from the Artificial Intelligence and Society Hub at the University of Chile. Their talk is entitled Latin American Youth and Their Information Ecosystem, Finding, Evaluating, Creating, and Sharing Content Online. In the second half, we'll hear from Sean Cross from the University of California, San Diego. His talk is entitled Characterizing the Online Learning Landscape, What and How People Learn Online. And as usual, we have some of the fellow Wikimedia research team members in the room, and they'll be joining us for the Q&A. I also want to take the opportunity to make two announcements. So first, the Wikimedia Research Fund has been launched, and we will be awarding grants of up to $50,000 to support research related to Wikimedia projects. Submissions are due soon. They're due January 3rd. And Martin will be dropping the link into YouTube and IRC so you can learn more. And we're also excited to announce that the 9th annual Wiki Workshop will be taking place on April 25th as part of the web conference. And the submission deadline for that is February 3rd. And again, Martin will be providing a link for more information. So at this point, we'll get started. So at the end of each talk, we'll have some time for questions and answers. So if you have any questions for the speakers, we invite you to please put them in the YouTube chat or on IRC, and Martin will relay them here to the speakers. So with that, I will hand it over to Lionel and María.
Thank you so much for having us today. We're really happy to share the results of our research. And well, we'll introduce ourselves just briefly for the public. Thank you everyone for connecting today. I'm a professor and a researcher at the University of Chile, and we co-direct the the Artificial Intelligence and Society Hub. And today we will be discussing with the team and presenting the results of our project.
Well, the same, thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be talking about our research here, our collective research actually. Mm-hmm. My name is Lionel Brossi, and I co-lead with María as well, the Artificial Intelligence and Society Hub at the University of Chile. And we work in general on the intersection of, well, artificial intelligence, but digital technologies, youth and education. So this is, to us, this is one of the core projects. So we are really happy to share with you what we are going to discuss today.
Emily, if you please change
the slide for the next one. Okay, maybe just to give a little context, this project is, or this module of the project is within an overall and bigger project called Ablatam, for which we started to research on the daily digital practices of young people to understand their skills, but also the content gaps that they found on internet across Latin America, and also their ideas or how do they think about the notion of information quality and disinformation. This was the first part of the project that we finished actually at the beginning of this year, and we have implemented it in Argentina, Chile, Brazil, and Colombia. Well, you can find all of the reports because they are all public available at ablatam.org. You can easily access the different reports with students, with teachers, and some recommendations as well. So what we are talking about today is the fourth module of this same project. We did together with the team of Wikimedia, and also with the friends of Youth and Media at the Berkman Klein Center, Urs Garcer, Sandra Cortesi, and other colleagues as well. So, okay, let's start talking about the project itself. Maybe the next slide, thank you.
The next slide shows us, the map of this presentation, where we will go by the results of every topic, and every topic is related to a question about which sources of information youth use or prefer, what are the most important variables in relation to what they think when looking for some piece of information, what do they think about trustworthiness, why and where do they share information, and for what, what are they looking for when they share information, what it means for young people that some information is accessible, if it's because you are sharing something fast, or because it's more complete information, or if it's free or paid. Those are kind of issues that we assess in this project. So, and the role, of course, and last but not least, it was the most important thing, the role of Wikipedia in the ecosystem of information. So we are happy to share this with you today.
So the idea of what we are going to share today is, because we work a lot on the methodology, in general, it's quite a challenge for us, because this project was thought at the beginning in English, then we implemented it in Spanish in Latin America, then we had to translate it from Spanish, all the results, to English, including the citations from the young people or the participants, so it was quite a challenge. But I guess we are going really soon to publish the final report. But it mainly consisted in 13 focus groups. And the focus group, we did it with the shape or with the methodology, not only like a typical focus group, because in general it's really boring for young people, but it has like a formative component as well. So we tried first to hear what youth have to say, but then we stayed longer to discuss concepts that they were more interested in learning about or discussing with us. So there were 30 focus groups with 80 participants. The age was from 13 to 17 years old, and the countries of the participants were Argentina, Chile, Venezuela, Mexico, and Uruguay. I think and Colombia, of course, because from Colombia we had a lot of participants.
In the next slide, we have a little, yes.
There are all the data.
Yes, and we had 33 male participants and 47 female participants too, between the ages of 13 and 17 years old.
So, well, now maybe we can stop sharing the slide, because the idea is to talk about one of each of the topics that we mentioned. And the first one was sources of information. The idea, well, we had a lot of questions in this, because we did it like breakout rooms through Zoom with the different participants. And the first question was like, which sources of or which kind of sources does young people visit when looking for information? And on the other part, we were exploring as well to what kind of person do they talk to when searching for information, and why is the reason? So here we have a lot of diverse answers. Some of them, maybe we could predict that was the result, but maybe some of them are really interesting. In general, they said that the first source of information, and I will say in all of the countries, is Google search, followed by WhatsApp. We are also studying misinformation issues, and the WhatsApp is one of the sources where most disinformation kind of messages or news occurs, and also in this case, followed by Instagram and TikTok. And this was a curious result. Many of the young people across countries, they say that the source of their information was Spotify, because one of the questions is, what do they understand for information? And in general, they say they associate information to the things they are mostly passionate about. So when they think of information, they were thinking about information about music or the bands that they like, etc. So when speaking about information regarding news, WhatsApp was the main platform that they were using, specifically receiving news from friends, from parents, but not necessarily trusting on this kind of news. And Instagram and TikTok, because they also say that they one of the sources of their information is TikTok, is because it is also connected with their interests and with their passions. In the case of Wikipedia, this is interesting because they recognize that even if Google is the first source of information, they recognize these square boxes that appears on Google when you perform a search as being generally information from Wikipedia. So sometimes they say, even if I look some information in Wikipedia and then I try to look for information in other platforms, finally it is information from Wikipedia. It's like, but because in general they look in Google as well. The first source they always go is Google, and this is a pattern across all countries. There is maybe another interesting point, and it's because sometimes they transition from Google to Wikipedia or to other platforms. And it seems like participants in general try to find complementary information. So they transition from Google to Wikipedia, but the reason to find complementary information is because they want to search for more interactive content. They say sometimes that, okay, I found the first information in Wikipedia, but then I would like to expand through videos, through images, or through infographics. In general, and this maybe it's a result from the prior modules of our project Ablatam, they trust more in visual information. We could confirm it in this module 4, but that was really interesting. I think a really interesting finding on the intersection of trusting in information and visual content.
Yes, that's the second point of our findings, that the special role of visual content. That's one of the most important elements across all focus groups in all countries was the importance of the format in which they consume the information, or the information was presented. Participants tend to think that visual information has an added value, and then they trust more in that information, and they prefer it because it's easier to understand, and they can trust more in the person who is showing their face on camera. So they were building trust across the visual information that they are processing. It's also more interesting for them, more engaging, more shareable, and that they found that videos are trust about, inspired trust about information. And of course, it's aligned with global findings, but learning about this indeed inspired a few questions for future research, because it's very interesting how they connect with visual content and with visual platforms. And we were thinking, for example, their relation with TikTok or Instagram, how it can impact their relationship with knowledge and learning, and what it means to classrooms or schools. So it's a finding and also an inspiration for new work.
Maybe I jump to, well, we have more findings on this, which will appear on the project, but maybe I jump because of the timing to the new topic. And the question was like, what kind of, what do you understand by accessible? Because we have different ideas. Well, in general, young people or children have very different ideas than adults on many of these topics. But in terms of accessibility, I will say that a pattern across countries were easy to understand and relate to. So participants were unwilling to engage with information that was really dense, or for instance, well, in the case of Chile, there is a really bad rating of reading comprehension. So all of what is a really long text, they rejected at the first time, but I will say that it's also a pattern across countries that they are looking for information that is precise and short in terms of, yes, no sé cómo decir,
the length of
the text, yes.
The text.
And the other thing, it was that they found, and this is a bit linked with Wikipedia as well, like they say that many times they found the vocabulary on Wikimedia not very familiar. Like for them, it was a bit too academic. So that's why they also wanted to jump to check or to see the information on video. And maybe going a little bit back in terms of why they like visual information, or they trust in visual information, is they said, this was really interesting to us. They say, we consume information in YouTube and we trust more when it's related or when it's narrated in first person, like a person telling story of themselves, like own experiences. This is the information that young people in general reported to trust more. Maybe this is a disclaimer. We are not talking like in a representative way across Latin America. We are just talking about the participants of this research. But we really see, I mean, all that we are mentioning is because we saw patterns across different countries.
They were quotes like, we are willing to trust someone we recognize, we know, or that it seems to be suitable to address a given subject. For example, a doctor about medicine or about COVID. That's that kind of things. They were actively saying that they need to see someone connecting with them and with their experiences from their point of view. So it's a key aspect of the question about trustworthiness.
The other really important point in terms of accessibility, and actually this connects with other projects that we did on artificial intelligence, is the speed or ease of navigation. When we were working with UNICEF in a project on artificial intelligence and asking about what is the best feature that they found that they find in artificial intelligence, they say because it can make life everything more fast. They like speed and easy. So I think in this regard, we found similar answers. And focusing particularly on Wikipedia, they said that for them, it was a bit difficult to find the information because sometimes what happens when they were looking for information, it was embedded in a different topic. So I don't know if they, would love to find about autonomous cars, then this topic was embedded in another topic. And then it was difficult for them to navigate. What they suggested is that they would love to have like little snapshots and more visual to access in an easy way to the information. And another interesting thing that we hear is that when they look for bibliography, because this is a way of expanding the content that they found in Wikipedia, they don't like to scroll down that much, and they would love to have some bibliography on the top of the page in terms of usability. They mentioned that, and many of them.
To have the references right next to the text so they can go and search more of if there's anything interesting for them. So I think we can go to the role of the roles of Wikipedia in youth information ecosystem. And participants mentioned, as we said before, two main ways of accessing Wikipedia, and it's Google, the first one. most likely about from the information box on the left that we see in a Google search. And the second one is actively going to Wikipedia for specific information. So there were like mixed feelings too about Wikipedia, because they said it was a first source of information in every search, but it was tensioned with the information they received from older people that said parents or teachers that were against the use of Wikipedia. So it was a very interesting conversation in every focus group about what do they think about the encyclopedias in general, but the use or the creation of collaborative knowledge. So this was one of the main topics of our discussions.
We have a mix of answers in terms of, Wikipedia, in terms of trustworthiness and use. And as Anna mentioned, it was really influenced mostly by teachers, and secondly by parents, I will say. But teachers tend to get upset or angry and not recommend to use Wikipedia, because sometimes they say that it's the first thing that students go instead of looking in different sources. The other, we have, I think, only 5 minutes, but the other important thing that I think it's very particular for Latin America is that all participants emphasize that the site or any platform must offer free content. Like nobody was greedy or thinking about paying for accessing content, except maybe Spotify or Netflix or to watch series, but in general to look for information they are interested. In general, I would say that they just navigate free content. Of course, when we did, because the methodology was qualitative, and in terms of quantitative information, we did a questionnaire with social demographics. So there was a great variety of socioeconomical, positions, I will say. I don't know how to say it now, but socioeconomical status. So, but even, I don't know, the participants who were studying in expensive schools in Colombia or in Mexico, they say that they just wanted to access free content. We have a lot of sites regarding this from the same participants. And maybe, I don't know if
we can talk, I was,
trust.
Yes, because in the matter of trust, we have assessing it from different points of views, but it's important how they connect with people and the importance they give to authority in this case. If a teacher says something about a topic, or how they inform or they check some information with family and friends, their first connection and the source of trust is people they know. So even if they go for some information online, they try to connect with other people to check the information they look for.
The other point that is really interesting is that sometimes they like to consume, I don't like the word consume exactly, but information that they can share, because for them, the notion of shareability is really important. That's why I think so. Well, we think, and in the report appears that social media is really central when they look for information as well. So the shareability in Wikipedia in general is not a thing that they get into, or they share content from Wikipedia, except when it's for homework or any specific task that, I don't know, they need to help a friend or something about some information. So in terms of shareability, the other thing that appears is the first thing that appears is that they like to share memes or memes. And this is another important topic, because when they say going back to the first point, in terms of sources of information, they said that memes are a source of information to them. And even not only jokes, but even about politics or any topic, because what they say is, sometimes I get to know about a news or about a scandal of a politician or whatever, because I see a meme and then I explore on the internet to understand the meaning of the meme, because I know that everybody is posting memes about it. So that was another important thing to mention from the report. So I think this is like the general points that, well, some of the highlights of the results of the project. But of course, we are really happy to expand in the Q&A timing that we have, and that's it.
I think this is the time to thank to all the people who collaborated in the report, because we had the participation of many people translating and thinking about key aspects. Our colleagues from Wikimedia Chile and everyone who contributed to the report. So thank you. And thank you for listening to us.
For the patience. We have I have a bad English, sorry.
Me too, sorry.
No, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. Those are some really interesting insights. So from here, I'll turn it over to Martin, who has collected some questions from YouTube.
Yes, I will happily pass this on. First was not a question, a comment, but a viewer from Mexico commented from their daughters that they echoed the sentiment about the negative view on Wikipedia from teachers. Sadly, they were echoing that. But jumping forward to the first question, I think the first one from Diego was on a technical level, and they asked, how did you recruit the participants in the study?
Okay, let's go question by question. Thank you, Diego. That was actually one of the most difficult challenges. And the reason was that when we performed this, as I mentioned at the beginning, we were trying to do the workshops face-to-face in different schools where we have already worked through the project. But then the pandemic came and there was confinement and everything has to be done virtually. We didn't have any problem with that. But the thing is, in general, we work with public schools from traditionally marginalized communities, but they were all really overwhelmed, like school communities, directors, teachers. We were saying like, we want to do this workshop, and they were saying like, we really can't, we don't have the timing, and half of the students are not connecting because they don't have accessibility. It was really, really difficult. So what we did is we used all our databases, contacts, friends from different schools to recruit people, and also advertising, not paying advertising actually, but we put a post on social media of our networks, because as we work also with the Bergman Klein Center for Internet and Society, our close friends and colleague Andrés Lombana helped us in Colombia, María Garcia in Mexico with contacts. So we were really trying really hard to recruit participants. And I will say one good thing is that when you work with this kind of workshops mediated by, for instance, teachers that request their students to participate, sometimes they go but feeling like it's a mandatory task and they are not really passionate about sometimes. But as this was an open call, in general, most of the participants really wanted to participate and really wanted to talk about their experiences. So it was really like, I don't know, anybody in a desperate situation to recruit participants in difficult times will do it, like using all channels possible. But also we have the collaboration of some schools that were really like highly participative, I would say.
Thank you. I will go to the next one. I think you, Diana, asked that the preference for visual and interactive is really interesting. Also, Spotify and TikTok, does this suggest that the I like it of the participants also translates into the I trust it? I think you You talked a little bit about that, but maybe I also found this very interesting. So maybe there's something you want to comment on in more depth.
Yes, there is. Actually, it could come from cognitive psychology and the confirmation bias that in general we kind of trust in the information that confirms our interest, our passions, our beliefs. This is something that we work on the sphere of artificial intelligence. So I think, yes, but not necessarily. I mean, young people have a lot of critical capacities, more than stereotypically an adult imagine. But I will say that even adults, we tend to believe in things that we more like as well. We have this kind of bias, or in Spanish will be sesgo de confirmación. But the truth is, maybe not only like, but they also, when they are passionate about the topic or where they are really interested and connected with the topic, they trust more. But I think Anna can tell a little bit more about the visual content and trustworthiness.
No, I just wanted to add that the quotes were very specific. They say, for example, why would someone go through the effort of creating a video if the person did not know what they were talking about? So it really is connected to trust and what do they trust more. And they talk about whether they find something, they feel like they are succeeding in the search of something specific. So if they are looking for something, for a piece of information, and they can find a video that explains it in detail with images, they feel like they are really accomplished something. So it's related with the experience of search and finding something they can see.
And maybe this is something that we are not, of course, recommending it, but it appears in a few of the answers that participants says in general that they trust in YouTubers, in people who they follow, in young people, peers that they follow on YouTube. And in general, they have a really high rate of trustworthiness for young people. And this is funny, but one of the suggestions that we hear was like, I don't know, Wikipedia should have some recommendation from YouTubers on certain areas that youth should interact within the platform. And that was something that we wouldn't think about it, but that was one of the what participants said.
And also about this last piece is that it doesn't connect with reliability of information. So we think, as a result too, that it's a future field of research and, of course, policymaking or discussion about quality of information and how do we look for reliable information.
So I think they use different criteria for judging trustworthiness in general, but yes, the visual content is, for them, is in general a plus. Thank you for the question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, there's a long queue on from YouTube questions, so I tried to see. One question from Trisha was related to the information on the wikis being hard to find or buried. Did the participants talk specifically about the links between articles and whether they found the number of links overwhelming?
Not specifically. Not specifically. The report says that they think that some pieces of information in Wikipedia are too long and are too many references. They Well, we can say that it's overwhelming for them to look through 10 or 15 references, and they are not going to do it. But they do things that they should be references. There should be references, and they the only thing they ask is that they are not at the end of the.
To be more accessible.
Yes, to be more accessible.
Like actually they said in the header. They would like to have reference, like how to expand the information in the header of the platform. But I don't remember if they say like a lot of links, but they definitely said that it's a lot of text and difficult text for them to read. In general, they are not accustomed to read a lot. They prefer visual content, definitely.
Thank you. I'll get off one more question, and so I combine two. So this will be two parts because they kind of overlap. And one is about how much do participants see podcasts as a source of information? And the other slightly related is if libraries, like public libraries, school libraries, or books come up in the answers as a resource that is used. So podcasts and libraries are different aspects.
Yes, I think. Oh, do you want to go or?
I can go first because it depends. We are doing very situated contextual research, so it literally depends on who are we talking to, because all of them mention documentaries, for example, but very few talked about podcasts, because it's something that not all of them can access. So it depends on socioeconomical background, I think.
And regarding the public libraries, the thing is, as we did it in the high peak of the pandemic, they were actually thinking in general like how they interacted like to nowadays. And yes, nobody mentioned the public libraries, at least in this case. But I can talk about the prior modules of Ablatam, the first, second, and third module. We did them in prior to the pandemic, and they did mention, I don't know, sometimes the auto-reporting of young people in the context of doing the workshop in schools could be biased, could have, I don't know, some issues. But they report that, firstly, they go online, and if they can't find the information online, they go to the library of the school. But I wouldn't say that they go to other kind of different public libraries, only the libraries of the school for the cases that where they have libraries, actually, because as I mentioned in the first modules of this project, we work with really vulnerable communities around countries. But they did mention libraries, but prior to the pandemic.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much for answering those questions so thoroughly. Thanks to those of you joining on YouTube who asked those great questions. So at this point, we will hand it over to Sean and Lionel and Ana Maria. I hope you're able to stick around until the end in case there are more questions for you.
Thank you.
Great. So Sean, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Emily. Let me get my slides going here. Great. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming to my talk. So I just want to first mention that I did this work with Esther Hargitay at the University of Zurich and Alyssa Red-Miles at the Max Planck Institute for Software Systems in Germany. And today we're going to talk about characterizing the online learning landscape, what and how people learn online. Before I dive into this research, I think it's important to mention that before I started graduate school, I was a software developer at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health in the Department of Biostatistics. And in addition to writing software and doing lots of data analysis, I also helped to create several online courses. And these courses included the Johns Hopkins Data Science Specialization, which is on Coursera.org. It's probably the most well-known online course that I was a part of. And this course went on to become one of the most successful, massively open online courses in history. It enrolled millions of students. It's been going on for the last 8 years, and I'm proud to say that the course is still running strong. And my main motivation for making online courses has always been to give access to people who are seeking primarily data science and computer programming education, and to offer resources as cheaply as possible, most often for free, and to offer educational experiences that are as authentic as possible. So that means that the lectures and the assignments try to approximate real data analysis and computer programming tasks that might be encountered by professionals early in their career. So like many instructors online, the main technologies that I use to distribute course materials were written documents, usually in the form of websites, and videos that were often hosted either on YouTube or on the website of one of these online course platforms. But unlike other online instructors, I had an advantage that many instructors lack, which is that I would use computer programming to build systems that could help me manage all of the course materials for these online courses. So for example, I built a system called ARI that could use the books and lecture materials that we had already written for our courses, and it could turn those materials into videos using text-to-speech technology that would speak over our lecture slides. Computer programming also enabled me to build interactive course materials for my students. So I could send them little computer programs or set up web applications that they could access that would simulate situations that they might encounter as a professional working in the field of data science. So to give you kind of a little bit of a better idea of what I'm talking about, Swirl and Tidy Data Tutor are both tools for learning data science that I co-created and that I currently maintain. And they're built specifically to be incorporated into online courses. Swirl is an interactive programming tutor that guides students through programming lessons, and Tidy Data Tutor makes step-by-step illustrations automatically to show how computer code is manipulating a data set. So, the details of these systems aren't so important, but all this is just to say that I approach the study of online education overall as someone who has spent several years creating and maintaining and scaling online education. And, I recognize that I have this kind of unfair advantage compared to others who teach online because of the features that I use from computer programming that are just not accessible to most online course creators, right? It's not a reasonable expectation to assume that everyone who's teaching online can also write computer programs. So, I'm not here today to talk to you about my own experiences in teaching data science or teaching computer programming, but rather I want to talk about how my experience doing this leads me to come to the research that I'm going to discuss today with this following point of view, which is that online course creators are currently severely underserved in terms of the technologies available to them and the kinds of learning experiences they are empowered to create and maintain. And based on the work I'm going to present today, I think that you'll agree with me by the end of this talk that Wikimedia and Wikipedia is going to be central to this vision of the future of online education. So the purpose of this study is to look at the entire online learning ecosystem holistically. So now there are tons of formal and informal online learning resources available for free, or at least at a significantly lower cost compared to traditional offline educational opportunities. This has really lowered barriers to entry for people seeking educational resources, which now include things like massive open online courses, all kinds of video tutorials, how-to articles, online discussion groups, and of course, and importantly, wikis. And these resources help people gain new skills with the potential to improve their job prospects, their social mobility, and their personal welfare. So this study is the first, to our knowledge, that addresses this full ecosystem by looking at more than one subject or resource at a time across all online learners. And in this study, we were trying to answer the following research questions. So first, just what do people learn about online? How do people learn online? And that means, like, what learning resources do they use? And we also were interested in in characterizing, what are these core online learning experiences? And by that we mean, which subject are people learning through what resource? And what are these common experiences across the majority of online learners? So to answer this research question, these research questions, we conducted an online survey of 2,260 adults age 18 and over in the United States. And to improve the generalizability of our findings, our survey sample was demographically balanced to match US Census statistics on gender, age, and education. So to understand our participants' online learning experiences, we asked them what subjects they had learned about online and what types of resources they used to learn about each of those subjects. So a respondent who indicated that they used a particular type of resource to learn about a particular subject had what we defined as an online learning experience. So to understand what subjects people learned online, we asked questions like, which of the following topics have you tried to learn about through online resources? And then this was followed by 19 subjects and the option of other and specifying something else and none of the above. So subjects range from traditional academic subjects like history, math, and science to general welfare and lifestyle subjects like do-it-yourself, travel, personal health, makeup and fashion, online safety, and related topics. Overall, respondents could report up to 190 possible online learning experiences. So that's pairs of subjects and resources, such as like learning math on YouTube or learning languages using an interactive tutorial. And since we asked about how respondents, and so 190 comes from that we asked respondents about 19 subjects using up to 10 online learning experiences. So we examined how many of our respondents chose to learn about these subjects. The only subject that more than half of our respondents reported learning about was do-it-yourself, which includes around the house activities such as cooking and baking and arts and crafts. And after DIY, the next most popular subjects were mostly about general welfare and lifestyle. So things like physical health, personal physical fitness, and followed by a few subjects that are probably more relevant to this audience. So 32% of subjects said that they learned about geography, and 40% of our respondents said that they learned about history. Respondents also used at least one and at most 10 resources to learn about a particular subject. So of the 2,100 respondents to our survey who indicated using at least one resource, the vast majority, so 88% of them, relied on YouTube to learn online. 77% of participants said that they used Wikipedia, and also said that they used informational articles to learn online. Over half of our respondents reported learning online using how-to guides, or by using basic question and asking forums, either asking questions, which 60% of our respondents said that they participated in, or reading answers to other people's questions, which was slightly more popular. The least used online learning resources were still used by half of respondents. So that includes things like interactive tutorials, course materials that have been posted online to online courses, and practice exam websites. Also, 55% of our respondents reported enrolling in a formal online course, And of those respondents, 40% reported having taken an online course from a local university, while around 23% said that they had taken an online course at a university that wasn't local to them. We also found that YouTube is not only the resource used by most respondents, it's also used by respondents to learn about the most subjects. So a respondent who uses YouTube for learning uses the platform to learn about an average of 3.5 subjects. Wikipedia was used to learn about the second most number of subjects on average. So Wikipedia is used to learn about 2.5 subjects on average. And this, also compares to Wikipedia's, performance in this metric compares to the frequency with which people read Q&A forums as well. Additionally, we examined how often each resource was used to learn about a specific topic. So, for YouTube, you can see in this figure that the most popular topics are makeup and fashion, physical fitness, and do-it-yourself. While for Wikipedia, the most popular subjects were in descending order: history, religion and ethics, travel and geography, and politics. Finally, we wanted to consider commonalities in how people learn online. And so in order to do that, we used K-modes clustering to group respondents who had used more than one online learning resource, and clustering them based on the resources that they used. So of the respondents who used at least 2 online learning resources, 17% had in common only that they used YouTube, while 13% of respondents had in common that they used both YouTube and at least one of the following of how-to articles, Wikipedia, and informational articles. An additional 20% of respondents said that in common they had used YouTube, at least one of the 3 resources that I mentioned before, and asking questions on question answer forums. And then we couldn't really find any pattern in resource use for the other remaining 50% of respondents. So that's kind of an overview of the results of our data collection and data analysis. And so I want to talk about some of the implications for these findings. So as I noted earlier, YouTube is the most popular resource for online learning. Perhaps unsurprisingly, informational articles and Wikipedia are the next most popular types of online learning resources. And especially considering that their text-based articles and web pages were some of the first and most fundamental parts of the internet. The 4 core resources that we identified, YouTube, informational articles, Wikipedia, and how-to guides, are built around 3 legacy internet technologies: video, static text, and wikis. YouTube was founded over 15 years ago. Static text websites have been around since the beginning of the internet, and wikis are technology that's over 25 years old. So we hypothesized that the popularity of these legacy technologies has 4 potential causes. First, adult learners may find it easier or prefer to learn through informal video media like YouTube and in informational articles, and thus they leverage these resources the most. Second, due in part to having a long period of time over which to develop content, these popular learning resources are able to supply a high volume of content across many topics. For example, YouTube it's the leading video platform, both in terms of hours of content and in terms of revenue. Therefore, it might be the easiest for learners to find learning content on YouTube, leading them to learn using video media. The third, overextended use. Internet users may have developed familiarity with learning from video and informational article style content. So this familiarity may lead them to continue to turn to learning modes from which they're comfortable receiving content instead of exploring newer learning technologies, such as interactive tutorials, online courses, and question and answer forums, which may have a lower supply of content. And finally, the popularity of these resources may create like a cyclical effect, where because resources are more popular, they offer more supply, and they're easier to find in search results, and thus learners are more likely to turn to them. So these findings raise some important questions about future work to investigate whether these resources actually best meet learner needs, or if they're merely used out of convenience due to supply, familiarity, or ease of access. In the paper, which I linked in this presentation, we delve a lot deeper into how our findings support or refute each of these potential drivers behind learners' choice of online learning resources. Our work also finds that adult online learners have extremely diverse interests. More than half of our respondents reported learning about 5 or more different subjects. So one of the advantages of YouTube and Wikipedia is supply of content, right? These resources host content about a wide variety of subjects. However, newer online learning resources often lack this volume of content, either by choice or due to their relative novelty. And this lack of diversity may inherently influence the mechanism of online learning. So to kind of explain what I mean, let's take a look at kind of a case study from the data that we collected about adults online studying law versus studying computer programming. So law and computer programming carry wide-ranging societal influence, but they're 2 of the least popular subjects among our respondents. About 15% of respondents indicated that they learned about either subject. So despite the equal popularity of these subjects, programming was one of the most popular subjects for 2 types of resources: course materials and interactive tutorials. While law was the 12th most popular of the 19 subjects respondents learned using Wikipedia, and ranked lower in terms of popularity for every other type of online learning resource. So while it's possible that respondents use a wide variety of resources for learning about law because of the nature of the subject, this may also be the case because less online course content is available for law versus programming. Programming has numerous free online course style content that and interactive programming tools online. And there are more traditional courses that are either free or pay, or you can pay for them, that are offered by universities for computer programming. So our findings suggest that learners may turn to newer resources tailored to their learning needs for a particular subject if those resources are available. In absence of such tailored resources, however, online learners may turn to resources that they know will offer sufficient affordable content with a big supply. And in that case, that means YouTube and Wikipedia. So the last implication that I want to talk about is that all of these issues may relate to the ease with which resource creators and online course creators and online educators can develop new content. So the relatively low popularity of new online learning resources, so that includes things like online courses and interactive tutorials, highlights the absence of the diffusion of innovations that we might expect given years of interest in new types of educational media and interactive online learning technologies. This absence may be related to the ease with which these resources can be created. Phones, tablets, and personal computers are now often embedded with more than one camera, and you would think that this would make the creation of videos easier than ever before. And of course, the tools for publishing text-based articles are just as widespread as those for publishing video. However, relatively less robust and cost-effective support is available for the creation of newer resources. For example, many universities have had to scale up, full Hollywood production studios in which to create online courses. Purchasing expensive equipment is out of reach for many who are creating educational content on YouTube. So, similarly, interactive tutorials involve the creation of new software products. That requires significant grant funding and investing in time for software development. So, the future of the work that I'm interested in is kind of in the democratization of these of online education, and how we should consider to democratize the creation of content in an effort to improve the learning content that is available for students. So I'm happy to to talk about these results and answer any questions. And thanks so much for your time.
Great, thank you so much, Sean. At this point, I'll turn it over to Martin to see if there's any questions on YouTube or IRC.
We have so far one question from YouTube, which was around, Trisha was wondering I'm wondering what the sources of the informational articles and the how-to guides are, and specifically kind of which websites or domains, if anything stuck out for that.
Sure. So we asked people to report, like specifically, what kinds of websites that they were referring to, really for each of these online learning resources. So people, in terms of like question and answer websites, reported things like Stack Overflow and Quora, and also things like Yahoo Answers, which I actually think has since kind of disappeared. In terms of how-to sites, people reported things like WikiHow. They reported things like websites that host things like cooking recipes, and websites that host kind of like content for like fixing up your house or fixing up your apartment. Yeah, in general, those were the answers, at least off the top of my head, that stuck out the most.
Great, thanks. Isaac, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I also want to highlight that for folks listening too, that this is a really well-written paper. So I highly recommend folks check out the paper.
Thank you so much for saying that.
It really was a joy to read. So I have lots of questions, but I think I'll start with maybe like a more methodological one. So a couple years ago, we ran some surveys of readers on Wikipedia, trying to understand kind of demographic differences and who was reading Wikipedia. And doing that work and looking at a bunch of other surveys, one of the interesting things that came out is when you ask people like, do you read Wikipedia? Especially in the United States, almost everybody says yes. You don't see really any demographic gaps in who is reading. But when you start switching this to a more like frequency oriented question, so like, did you read Wikipedia yesterday? Then you start seeing some of these big gaps in usage and showing up along demographic lines. And I was just curious, especially in like preparing the survey and things like that, whether you kind of have any thoughts about like general usage of these resources versus ones that people are going to very frequently, and whether you would expect to see kind of different results if you focused on a more like daily usage kind of question.
That's a really good question. And the answer is, we did ask we asked questions about frequency of usage. We asked questions about demographics. And in fact, I would love, if the results from that Wikipedia survey are published somewhere, I would love to read them, and I would certainly love to cite them, because we were basically preparing an analysis of those those results, that had to do, some had to do with frequency, some had to do with demographics, and kind of people's paths through different online learning resources, and also like the outcomes that they experienced from using those resources, and how demographics played into that. But this data was collected like at the end of 2019, and so as we were writing that analysis, all of education, all education became online education, right, during the pandemic. And so we're actually working on what we're trying to organize right now is to do like a comparative study in terms of how things have changed since the beginning of the pandemic, since we feel like the online learning has and like the frequency of people doing online learning has definitely changed and affected demographics and frequency and that kind of thing. So those are like all really good questions. And I think that from like the, preliminary analysis, I imagine that, I think that there is definitely like evidence of a digital divide in terms of frequency of use and like the kind of use. Does that get to your answer your question?
Yeah, thanks. And I happily will follow up too with some of the data around what we were saying. And it's exciting to hear that you're doing a follow up. That was one of my other kind of questions. So.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Yeah, I would really like to see the results of that survey. So thanks.
Lionel and Anna Maria, I see that you have a question.
Yes, thank you, Emily, and thank you, Sean, for your presentation. I was very curious to know where we were discussing it, because you talked about democratization of the creation of content, and we learned that there are not much creation of content among the youth that we talked to. So if you could expand on what level of content creation you found, and what it means to them, and how it is related to shareability. We would love to hear about that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. So, we didn't ask, this was we didn't ask the respondents about like their experiences creating content. I think that's, I think that, in the paper, we're trying to connect like other work about content creation to the just to the availability of like different online learning resources for different subjects and how those things might be related. But, as someone who has, created a lot of like online courses and in general just like puts stuff online, probably more than just like the average person. I think that, obviously there are these like very common and kind of platform independent dynamics where, a relatively small percentage of the people on any particular platform, whether it's a learning platform or whether it's, a social network or whatever, very few people post content or create content or publish content compared to the number of people who are on the platform and who are consuming it in general. But I will say that I think it's funny because I really appreciate your discussion about TikTok because I think that, and again I don't have like a citation for this, but just looking at how especially social media platforms have enabled people to like create content and kind of like the history of that. I think that a part of TikTok's success has been the like relatively high sophistication of like the tools that they provide to users, and that those tools are like relatively easy to use, right? And we see before TikTok, we saw a lot of like apps kind of like filling the gap in terms of people who wanted to create content like for other platforms, whether that be Instagram or Facebook or what have you. And again, this is in the realm of not in the realm of online education, but the realm of social media. You had apps like unfortunately they're like notorious now in terms of things like Facetune, things like Visco, right, where you're adding features or you're making your face look different or whatever. But the point is that they were those tools recognized like a demand for basically a demand for creating and editing content that wasn't part Instagram or wasn't part of of whatever social network, right? And I just looking at the online learning landscape today, and I'm especially interested in all of your perspective as as folks involved with Wikipedia, how in terms of the availability of tools to to create an online course, or to create an online just to create a video series, sharing some kind of knowledge or skill that you have, or to write a Wikipedia article, right? Or to to otherwise create content in the Wikimedia universe, right? I'm not super, the truth is that I'm not super aware of what kind of tooling is and isn't available in the Wikimedia world, and part of why I wanted to do this talk is to come meet folks and to learn about that space. But I think that this question of what tools are available, are they easy for people to use? Do people are people able to create quality resources that where they also get feedback about whether or not the quality is good, or whether or not the thing that they created is successful or valuable. I absolutely see a connection there between tools and the kind of content and kind of mission for Wikimedia. So yeah, I'm super interested in learning more about that.
Thanks, Sean. So I think at this point, we'll open up questions to both sets of speakers. So Pablo, I think you had a question a while back. Would you like to ask it now?
Yeah, thank you, Emily. Okay, first, thank you to all the speakers for this showcase. It has been very, very interesting talks. So I have some kind of a general question. In our first talk, we saw many features from young Latin American participants of these focus groups, reporting why visual content might be so successful for learning in terms of engagement. And I see that the findings from some are somehow also consistent with some of these features. So part of the reason why engagement might be so high in these kind of platforms, in other studies have been found that they are also incredibly powerful in the space of disinformation, or at least misinformation. So for the context of Wikimedia, what can we learn from these successful platforms to increase engagement while preventing readers from, and particularly readers that are interested in learning, like young readers, for instance, from misinformation dynamics and from content that is not true?
I have an idea of an answer, if it's okay.
So sorry, we will have trouble with the sound.
Okay, you guys should go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. It's a very interesting question because it relates with reliability that we were talking about. It's very connected with misinformation, and we've thought about how to improve the shareability of Wikipedia, because that was something that they said they don't share Wikipedia on social media for different reasons, but definitely we could learn that if we add visual elements to Wikipedia, we could make it more shareable.
And more engaging in general for young people.
Yes.
I mean, at least this is really, really strong statement from young people. Like they are really expecting videos and images. Yes.
Yes. So maybe not just embedding videos on every piece of information, but definitely, for instance, putting a subtitle or a title that says here you can find images and videos, because really they are looking for that kind of information.
Actually, we some of the participants reported that they would love to have a section within Wikipedia, like a general section that it's customized for young people, like where you can get into the articles in a more visual space, because they thought it was a very in terms of design and usability, a very adult-centric platform.
Gracias.
De nada.
Gracias a ti.
Sean, did you want to add to that?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so I think that, obviously, I don't want to overplay my hand in terms of like admiration of TikTok, because obviously there is like a casino, dopamine hit element to it that I think is not good and not something, that I would encourage anyone to emulate. But, another, something else that I admire about TikTok is the ease with which that you can remix all kinds of different content, right? So like the kind of, the whole premise of the app is that it's like a video over some other kind of audio, right? So whether that be like it's a popular song, or what have you. The other thing is that, TikTok has tools for, you having a video and you're reacting to another video that's like playing simultaneously in one video. I think it's called a stitch. And also, TikTok has like very easy tools for using a green screen, which is another kind of remixing, right? Because it's your face or some part of your video in front of a static image or in front of another video, right? So I think that I'm not saying that like those specifically are tools that should exist in Wikimedia, but if there were the ability to kind of like remix things within a click or within another click, or within a couple clicks, seems like something that that Wikimedia might want to think about, especially just considering the huge amount of content, right? Whether that's audio or video or what have you, that Wikimedia has. So I think that like if it was, I think that there's shareability in terms of like, oh, we're going to embed this in a web page, or we're going to embed a link here, but also there's a shareability element of just being able to like show something or play some audio or something that I think I don't know, I think it's at least like valuable to think about.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your response. Any other questions from the room?
Yes, I'm going to jump in. And that connects, I think was first raised by Tiziano in the YouTube chat, but I think it relates more generally to the notion of shareability and visual images. That is about, and I think goes in both directions, whether you saw some difference about different depth of information seeking. So, for example, if participants have the same expectations, whether they are doing simple fact checking or whether they want to understand or learn something in depth. And then I could also imagine that maybe preferences or formats should depend on that. There's no one size fits all solution. I don't know if you have any thoughts around that.
There we go.
There we go. Yes. Thank you for your question. We think that about shareability is the thing is that they're looking for for engaging with other people. So when they look for some piece of content, they are looking to interact. They are not creating that content, but they are looking for content that they will make them popular on social networks, or that are a response to an interest they can share with family and friends through WhatsApp, for example. So that's the key issue, is that we're talking about something that is has a lot of dimensions and variables involved. I don't know if you can add something, or maybe Sean.
Sean, go ahead.
It's a really interesting question. I think that part of Wikipedia, the thing is I guess if you think about like the philosophical like kind of core of like a Wikipedia article is that it's supposed to be like it's like an old Britannica encyclopedia article, except really, except with even like more depth and more features, right, in terms of images, citations, and related articles, right, and all of the great features of wikis. And that is really, that is super deep, and is definitely one of the like major strengths of Wikipedia. But I also wonder like if there was a more skimmable, or I guess more like concise version of Wikipedia. And again, I think this goes back to like to shareability and to like repurposing the assets and the content that Wikimedia has, right? Because imagine that like you could kind of like create like a derivative Wikipedia page from a huge Wikipedia article that only talks about one part of the article, or is only like a summarization of the whole article, right? Like what does like summarized Wikipedia look like? And I'm sure people have thought about this already, and I'm just not as plugged in to the Wikimedia world, but I don't know, that's my reaction to that.
Thanks. All right, any last questions? All right. Then I think at this point we'll wrap up. I'd like to thank our speakers once again for their really insightful presentations today, and for the really rich discussion from the Q&A. Thanks to those of you who joined via IRC and YouTube for commenting and for providing questions. And we look forward to seeing you in January for our next showcase.
Thanks so much.